My great-great-grandmother predicted Pearl Harbor 3 months early. She predicted 9/11 down to the exact date, September 11th, 2001, written in faded ink in a journal dated March 1998. And 6 months ago, sitting in my basement at 3 in the morning, surrounded by her collection of prophecies, I found the one that predicted today, the one that predicted the end of everything. I'm recording this because someone needs to know what happened, how it started, how preparation saved my life and damned it at the same time. My name is Kael Mercer. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a survivor of the outbreak that killed civilization in approximately 72 hours. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up 6 weeks. Early October, Virginia. The Blue Ridge foothills were doing that thing they do in autumn, where every tree looks like it's on fire with color, and the air smells like wood smoke and dying leaves. I was in my basement library, which is really just a glorified storage room with too many bookshelves, cross-referencing my great-great-grandmother's predictions against historical records. Her name was Eliza Mercer, and she was what people politely called gifted, and what most people called completely out of her mind. She wrote everything down in leather-bound journals, page after page of predictions, visions, warnings. Most of it was cryptic nonsense about fire from the sky and cities of fever. But here's the thing. When you actually bothered to decode her rambling, she was right. A lot. Pearl Harbor. The islands will burn on a Sunday morning in December, and the Eagle will wake to war. December 7th, 1941. She wrote that in 1938. September 11th. The twin pillars will fall when fire takes wing on a September morning, and the world will never be the same. March 1998, like I said. There were dozens more, smaller things. The '08 financial crisis, Hurricane Katrina. She called them fever cities and drowned lands, and the great collapse of greed. All of it documented. All of it accurate enough that if you squinted at the metaphors, you could see she was talking about real events. Which is why, when I found the journal marked Final Prophecy, not to be opened until the cities burn, I paid attention. Inside, in her spidery handwriting, the fever will begin in 3 cities. One by the Western Sea, one in the heartland, one where the old port meets new money. On the day when autumn turns to winter's child, the dead will rise, and the prepared man will face his greatest test. Isolation will save him, but compassion will kill him. The living he tries to save will be his undoing. There were dates, specific dates, no year, but dates. October 12th for the first signs, November 23rd for the day the world ends. That morning, 6 weeks before November 23rd, I was watching CNN while making coffee. The crawler at the bottom of the screen mentioned unusual flu outbreaks in Seattle, Kansas City, and Charleston. Nothing major yet, just elevated cases being monitored by the CDC. 3 cities, West Coast, Heartland, Old Port with new money. I set my coffee down and checked the journal again. The descriptions matched perfectly. That's when I knew. Deep in my gut, that sick, cold certainty. It was starting. I should probably explain why I had a bunker in the first place, because I know how this sounds. Guy living alone in rural Virginia with a family history of prophecy and an underground shelter. That's prime, he's definitely a paranoid lunatic territory. But here's the thing. I'd seen too many of Eliza's predictions come true. Too many to dismiss. After the 9/11 prediction checked out, I started taking her seriously. Started preparing. Not in a wear a tinfoil hat and ran about chemtrails way, but in a methodical, practical way. I bought property outside of town. 50 acres of forested land with good water access and enough distance from neighbors that nobody questioned what I was doing. Spent 5 years building the bunker. doing most of the work myself to keep it quiet. 20 feet underground, reinforced concrete walls, independent power and water systems. Enough supplies to last 2 years if I rationed carefully. My friend Ryland thought I was insane. Most people did. But Ryland was the vocal one about it, always making jokes whenever he saw me at the hardware store. "Hey, Kael, the sky falling today? Need another 100 pounds of canned beans for the apocalypse." "Just like being prepared," I'd say. "Yeah, prepared for nothing," he'd laugh. You know the statistics on how likely an actual collapse is? You've got better odds of getting struck by lightning while winning the lottery. Maybe he was right. Or maybe he was dead now and I wasn't. Statistics are funny that way. The next 3 days, I accelerated my final preparations. The news was getting worse by the hour, even though they were trying to downplay it. Flu outbreak became aggressive flu strain, became concerning developments in public health. The media was doing that thing they do, where they tell you not to panic in a voice that makes it very clear you should absolutely be panicking. I hit every store within 30 miles, spreading out my purchases so I wouldn't attract attention. Batteries, first aid supplies, water purification tablets, propane canisters. I already had most of what I needed, but I topped off everything. 2 years of supplies became 2.5. The hardest part was the cat. Strider was a massive Maine Coon I'd adopted 3 years earlier. Or, more accurately, who'd adopted me by showing up on my porch and refusing to leave. 17 pounds of arrogant, territorial feline who believed he owned the property and I was just the help. Getting him to the bunker was going to be an adventure, but there was no way I was leaving him behind. I packed 40 pounds of cat food in 8 boxes of litter. People were going to die in the coming weeks, and I was stockpiling supplies for a cat. The absurdity wasn't lost on me. On October 15th, I went to see Mira. Mira Hollis was my neighbor's kid. Well, neighbor in the rural sense, meaning they lived about a mile down the road. She was 11, curious, the kind of kid who asked too many questions and actually listened to the answers. Her mom, Valencia, worked 2 jobs to keep things together after Mira's dad took off. They were struggling, but trying. I liked the kid. She'd come by sometimes to ask about the weird bunker project she'd heard people talking about, and I'd explain basic preparedness principles. Not because I thought she'd need them, but because she was genuinely interested, and kids should learn self-sufficiency. That day, I brought her a printed survival guide and a map to my property. "Mira, I need you to listen carefully," I said. We were sitting on her porch while Valencia was at work. "Something bad is going to happen soon. I don't know exactly when, but within the next few weeks. If things get dangerous, and I mean really dangerous, not just scary news, I want you and your mom to come to my place. You remember where the bunker entrance is?" She nodded, eyes wide. "Is this about the flu thing?" "Mom says it's not a big deal. Your mom is trying not to scare you, which is what good parents do. But I'm telling you the truth, it might be a very big deal. So if things go bad, you come find me, okay?" "Okay," she said quietly. I gave her the map and the guide. It was the kind thing to do, the compassionate thing. It was also the biggest mistake of my life, but I didn't know that yet. November 22nd, 48 hours until the date in the prophecy. I sealed myself and Strider in the bunker at dusk. The bunker was comfortable enough. 550 square feet divided into a main living area, storage room, bathroom, and what I generously called a bedroom, but was really just a sleeping nook with a thin mattress. Everything was designed for efficiency. Fold-down table, wall-mounted shelves, LED lighting on battery backup. The generator was housed in a separate ventilated chamber to manage noise and carbon monoxide. Security cameras covered all approaches to the property. I had 6 monitors mounted on the wall, cycling through different views. From underground, I could see everything happening outside without being seen. Strider immediately hated it. He spent the first hour yowling and trying to claw through the sealed entrance. Then he sulked on the highest shelf he could reach, glaring at me like I'd personally offended his ancestors. "Yeah, I know," I told him, "but it beats being eaten by whatever's coming." He flicked his tail dismissively. Strider had strong opinions about most things. I spent that night monitoring news and radio channels. The official story was still aggressive flu outbreak, but social media was painting a different picture. Videos of people attacking each other in emergency rooms, reports of bites spreading infection in minutes. The word zombie was being thrown around, usually with nervous laughter, but I could hear the fear underneath. The internet was starting to fragment. Some sites were down. Others were running non-stop live feeds of chaos in major cities. I watched Seattle burn. Watched crowds flee through Kansas City streets while something chased them. Crowds that didn't move quite right, didn't sound quite human. At 2:47 a.m. on November 23rd, I made the decision to commit. I sealed the emergency exit, the backup tunnel that led out past the tree line, and activated the air filtration system for continuous operation. We were locked in. Strider came down from his shelf around 4 a.m. and sat on my lap. I think he knew something was wrong. Animals pick up on that. "We're going to be okay," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "I've been preparing for this for years. We've got everything we need." He purred, which I chose to interpret as agreement rather than Stockholm Syndrome. At 9:47 a.m., the exact time specified in the prophecy, every major city in America reported simultaneous mass casualty events. The dead started rising. The cameras showed the outbreak hit our town by early afternoon. I watched Orrin Beckett, the pharmacist who'd sold me first aid supplies 3 days earlier, attack a customer in the parking lot. Watched the customer try to run. Watched Orrin, except it wasn't Orrin anymore, just something wearing his face, catch them and bite down on their neck. 7 minutes later, the customer was on their feet again, moving with that same wrong, twitching motion. The infection spread like fire in a dry forest. By nightfall, the streets were chaos. I cycled through my cameras, watching my entire town die and reanimate in real time. Cars crashed, houses burned. People ran screaming, and the things that used to be people followed. Around 10 p.m., I saw Ryland's truck speed past one of my perimeter cameras, weaving erratically. It crashed into a tree about 300 yards from my property line. I zoomed in and saw him struggling to get out, saw the blood on his face and chest. For about 30 seconds, I considered going out there. Considered breaking my isolation protocol to help my friend. Then I remembered the prophecy. Compassion will kill him. I watched Ryland try to crawl away from his truck, watched 3 infected stumble out of the woods and converge on his position. Watched him disappear under them. I turned off that camera and focused on the others. At 11:43 p.m., the power grid failed. My bunker switched seamlessly to generator power, but outside, the world went dark. The only light came from fires scattered across town, and the only sound was screaming. Strider curled up next to me on the cot. I wrapped myself around him and tried not to think about Ryland. The first week underground was about establishing routine. Structure keeps you sane when everything else is falling apart. 6 a.m. Wake up, check water filtration system, monitor camera feeds for movement patterns. 7 a.m. Exercise routine. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Can't afford to get weak from inactivity. 8 a.m. Breakfast. Usually canned soup or oatmeal. Feed Strider. Clean his litter box. 9 a.m. Inventory check. Update spreadsheet tracking food, water, medical supplies, ammunition. 10 a.m. Radio monitoring. Scan all frequencies for signals, broadcasts, anything human. 11 a.m. Maintenance work. Check generator, inspect seals, test backup systems. 12 p.m. Lunch. Read survival manuals or medical textbooks. 2 p.m. Security review. Analyze camera footage. Count infected in visible range. Track movement patterns. The infected were everywhere. They congregated near my bunker entrance, even though they couldn't see it. The entrance was disguised as a landscaping feature, a decorative rock formation with a hidden door. But they could hear the generator. The low hum attracted them like moths to light. I counted 34 visible infected on day 3. By day 7, it was over 60. They didn't sleep, didn't rest, just wandered in random patterns, occasionally clustering when they heard sounds. A few times I saw them chase deer or other animals. The animals that got caught became infected too, which was a fun new nightmare: zombie wildlife. The infected themselves were textbook horror movie material. Pale skin, clouded eyes with burst blood vessels. They moved in this lurching, twitching way, like puppets with tangled strings. Fresh ones could run. Older ones shambled. All of them were dangerous. On day 4, I cut my hand replacing an air filter. Sharp edge, deep cut across my palm. I spent 20 minutes in front of my medical textbook, hands shaking, cleaning and bandaging it. Not because I was worried about infection from the wound, I had antiseptic and bandages, but because every time I saw blood now, some lizard part of my brain screamed, "You're infected, you're dead, it's over." The cut healed fine, but the paranoia stuck around. Strider, meanwhile, was adjusting in his own special way. He'd claimed the highest shelf in the storage room as his territory, and would only descend when he wanted food or to use the litter box. The litter box situation was its own challenge. I had to manage waste disposal in a closed environment. I'd set up a sealed container system and was composting the waste for eventual use as fertilizer if we ever got out of here. Survival meant thinking long-term about even the most disgusting necessities. I talked to Strider constantly. Full conversations about inventory management, infected movement patterns, whether we should ration the good coffee or live a little. He'd stare at me with those green eyes, occasionally meow in response, and I'd pretend we were having a real dialogue. "Do you think they're still conscious in there?" I asked him on day 6. "The infected? Or is it just the disease using their bodies like meat puppets?" Strider yawned. "Yeah, probably doesn't matter either way," I agreed. The radio was mostly silence. Automated emergency broadcasts on repeat. Seek shelter, avoid contact. Military en route. But no military ever came. On day 5, I picked up what sounded like actual human chatter. 2 people on CB radios coordinating something, but it cut off mid-transmission. After that, nothing. By day 7, I'd accepted that civilization was done. No government rescue, no military intervention. Just isolated pockets of survivors trying to outlast the dead. That's when I saw her. Day 7, 2:34 p.m. I was doing my afternoon security review when movement on camera 3 caught my attention. Not the shambling, twitchy movement of infected. This was intentional, careful. A kid. Mira. She was hiding in an abandoned car about 200 yards from my perimeter, pressed down in the back seat. Even from the camera angle, I could see she was terrified, filthy, and probably dehydrated. Infected were circling the area, not directly aware of her, but getting closer with each random, wandering pattern. "No," I said out loud. "No, no, no." I'd told her to come here if things got bad, but I'd meant come to the property before the outbreak, not navigate through a horde of infected a week into the apocalypse. How was she even alive? Where was her mother? I watched for 2 hours. Mira didn't move from the car. The infected kept circling, sometimes passing within feet of her. She stayed completely still, barely breathing as far as I could tell. Smart kid. But she couldn't stay there forever. The internal debate lasted exactly 90 seconds. Option A, stay in the bunker. She's not your responsibility. The prophecy warned you about compassion. Helping people gets you killed. Option B, she's an 11-year-old kid you specifically told to come here. If you let her die, you're not surviving. You're just existing in a hole until you rot. Strider jumped on my lap and headbutted my chin, which I took as input. "You're right," I told him. "I'm going to regret this." I started planning the rescue. The plan was simple, which meant it had about 1,000 ways to go wrong. I'd exit through the emergency tunnel, which opened behind a fallen tree about 200 yards past the bunker entrance. I'd use a distraction, battery-powered radio on a timer, to draw infected away from Mira's position. Then make a quick extraction and guide her back through the tunnel. Simple. Stupid. Necessary. I prepped everything. Radio with timer set for 15 minutes, hunting knife strapped to my thigh, flashlight, first aid kit, rope in case she was injured and I needed to drag her. No gun, too loud, would attract more infected than it solved. Before leaving, I gave Strider instructions. If I don't come back, you've got enough food and water for weeks. Emergency exit code is 4771. Figure out how to work a keypad with pause. He meowed judgmentally. Yeah, I know. The tunnel was narrow, dark, and smelled like wet earth. I'd only used it once during construction. Crawling through it with a timer radio and rescue equipment was claustrophobic nightmare fuel. But 15 minutes later, I emerged behind the fallen tree, brush covering the exit, and surveyed the situation. 30+ infected visible. Most were clustered near the bunker entrance, drawn by generator noise. A few wandered randomly. Mira's car was across an open stretch, exposed, but doable if I timed it right. I set the timer for 5 minutes, placed the radio 50 yards to the east, and pressed start. Then I moved. The moment the radio kicked on, some aggressive metal station, maximum volume. Every infected in range snapped toward it and started shambling. Beautiful. Terrifying. Exactly what I needed. I ran for the car, keeping low, trying to make minimal noise. Reached it in 40 seconds. Mira saw me coming and her eyes went huge. Stay quiet, I whispered, opening the door. We're leaving. Now. Kael, she whispered back. Voice hoarse, probably from dehydration and crying. My mom. Later. Move. She climbed out. She was shaking, covered in dirt and what looked like blood. Not hers, I hoped. I grabbed her hand and we started back toward the tunnel. That's when the plan fell apart. The radio ran out of battery 3 minutes early. The music cut off mid-song, and suddenly all those infected that had been moving east reversed direction, searching for new stimulus. Like us. Running across open ground. Faster, I hissed, pulling Mira along. She was stumbling, exhausted, but she kept pace. We made it to the tree line with infected converging from 3 directions. I could hear them now, that wet, groaning sound they made, like someone trying to breathe through fluid-filled lungs. Found the tunnel entrance. Shoved Mira inside. Crawl, fast as you can, don't stop. She disappeared into the darkness. I followed, pulling brush back over the entrance just as the first infected reached the tree. I could hear it above me, shuffling around, groaning. But it couldn't see the entrance, couldn't figure out where we'd gone. We crawled for what felt like an hour, but was probably 3 minutes. My shoulder scraped against a rock outcropping, and I felt skin tear, hot pain spreading down my arm. Ignored it, kept moving. Emerged into the bunker storage room. Mira collapsed immediately, gasping. I sealed the tunnel door, checked the security feeds, infected swarming the tree line, but none had found the tunnel, and then looked at my shoulder. Deep scratch. Bleeding, but not terrible. Definitely not a bite. Probably not a bite. Maybe not a bite? The panic hit hard and fast. Infection spread through bites and scratches, everyone knew that. I'd just gotten scratched. By a rock, not an infected. But what if there was infected blood on the rock? What if microscopic amounts were enough? What if... Is that bad? Mira asked, pointing at my arm. It's fine, I lied. Just a scratch from the tunnel. My mom said scratches can infect you. Your mom was right, but this is from a rock, not from them. I'll be fine. I hoped I was right. I spent the next 48 hours convinced I was dying. Every symptom became proof of infection. Headache? Fever starting. Nausea? Disease taking hold. Sore muscles? Rigor mortis beginning early. I checked my temperature every 2 hours, monitored my pupils in the mirror, obsessively cleaned the scratch with every antiseptic I had. Mira watched me spiral with the exhausted patience of someone who'd seen enough horror to be immune to one more crazy adult. You're not infected, she said on hour 36. You don't know that. You're not dead yet. Mom said infection happens fast, like really fast. You'd be one of them by now." She was right. The medical textbook confirmed it. Infection showed symptoms within minutes to a few hours, full conversion within 12. I was at 36 hours and still human. The scratch was just a scratch. I sat down on the floor and tried to stop shaking. "Sorry," I told her. "Sorry you had to see that." "It's okay," she said quietly. "Everyone's scared of dying." "Yeah, everyone is." "My mom's dead," she said, not crying, just stating fact. I saw her change. She tried to bite me and Dad pulled her off. Then Dad pushed me in the closet and told me to run when I heard him scream. So I did.
I didn't know what to say to that. There's no good response to, I watched my mother become a monster and my father die saving me. "I'm sorry" felt insufficient, so I said it anyway. "I'm sorry, Mira."
"You told me to come here if things got bad. So I did. It took me 3 days to get here from town. I hid a lot."
3 days. 11 years old. Navigating through hell alone. "You did really good," I told her. "Most adults wouldn't have made it." "I know," she said. No false modesty, just acknowledgement. Strider chose that moment to jump down from his shelf and investigate the new human. He circled Mira cautiously, tail high, evaluating whether she met his standards. Mira held out her hand. Strider sniffed it, considered, and then headbutted her palm. "He likes you," I said. "That's rare. He barely tolerates me." "What's his name?" "Strider." "Like Lord of the Rings?" "Yeah." "Cool."
She started petting him, and Strider immediately began purring like a small engine. Traitor. I've been feeding him for 3 years and got maybe 1 purr per week. She pets him once and he's her best friend. "So," Mira said, still petting Strider, "how long are we staying down here?" I looked at my inventory spreadsheet, mentally recalculated for 2 people instead of 1. "I had supplies for 2 years," I said, "for 1 person. With 2 of us eating, conservatively, 8 months. And then? And then we figure something else out." It wasn't a great answer, but it was honest. The next 2 weeks were about adaptation. Learning to live with another person in 550 square feet when you've spent years alone develops its own rhythm. Mira was resilient in ways I hadn't expected. She didn't complain about the food, didn't argue about rationing, didn't break down crying every 5 minutes. She'd wake up from nightmares. I'd hear her muffled sobbing in the sleeping nook we'd set up for her. But during the day, she kept it together. I taught her the routine: water filtration maintenance, food inventory protocols, how to read the security cameras, how to operate the radio scanner. She learned fast, asked smart questions, and actually retained information. "Why do the infected gather near the entrance?" she asked on day 19. "Generator noise. They're attracted to sound. Can't we turn it off? Then we lose power for cameras, lights, air filtration. We'd be blind and suffocating." "What about battery power?" "Limited. We can run on batteries for about 12 hours. After that, we need to recharge, which requires the generator. So we're stuck making noise." "Yeah, but the entrance is hidden well enough that they can't figure out where the sound is coming from. They just know something's here." She processed that. "What if they get smarter?" Then we're in trouble. Strider had fully adopted Mira as his second favorite human. He'd sleep on her cot, follow her around the bunker, and generally act like he'd known her his whole life. The betrayal stung, but honestly, it was good for both of them. Mira needed something to care for besides herself, and Strider needed someone who'd pet him on demand. The litter situation was a constant challenge. With 2 humans and a cat in a closed environment, waste management became critical. I'd set up a composting system for human waste, basically a fancy bucket with sawdust and ventilation, and Strider's litter had to be changed daily to control odor. Mira helped without complaint, which I appreciated. Survival isn't glamorous. On day 21, we had our first serious conversation about the future. "What happens when we run out of food?" Mira asked. We were eating canned chili for dinner, rationed to 1 can split between us. "We'll need to venture out eventually. Scavenge. Find other survivors, maybe." Are there other survivors? Probably, scattered. The question is whether they're friendly or not. Why wouldn't they be friendly? Because resources are limited and people get desperate. She thought about that. Like when my dad's friend tried to break into our house after everything started? Yeah, like that. Dad shot him. Did he survive? I don't know. We ran after that. The infected count on cameras had gone from 60 to over 100. They were congregating, drawn by the generator hum. Some were fresh, recently turned. Others were obviously older, deteriorating, slower, but all dangerous. I'd also noticed they were learning, or maybe not learning, but adapting. They'd figured out that crashing into the landscaping around my entrance hurt them without accomplishing anything. Now they just circled, waiting. Waiting for what? For us to emerge? For the noise to stop? Or for nothing? Because they were mindless corpses driven by instinct. I didn't know. And not knowing was worse than any answer. Day 28 changed everything. We were doing morning inventory, Mira counting canned goods while I updated the spreadsheet, when she said something casually, without thinking. "Oh, I told Talon about your bunker before everything happened. He thought it was cool." I stopped typing. What? Talon, Mom's boyfriend? I told him you had this underground bunker and tons of supplies. He was really interested in how you... Mira. My voice came out flat, controlled, because the alternative was screaming. You told people about this place? About the supplies? She looked up, confused by my tone. Yeah? I mean, you told me about it. I didn't think it was a secret. Who else did you tell? Talon? His cousin Brecken? A few kids at school? Why? Is that bad? I stood up, walked to the security monitors, started scanning camera feeds systematically. Kael, what's wrong? Did you tell them where it was? The location? Well, yeah. I drew them a map once. Talon wanted to see it. Why are you acting weird? I pulled up a map of my property, marked the bunker entrance, calculated sight lines and approach vectors. Talon Reeves. I'd seen him around town, construction worker, unemployed, the kind of guy who was always hustling for money and never quite finding it. Him and his cousin Brecken, who'd been dishonorably discharged from the military for reasons nobody talked about. They knew about the bunker, knew the location, knew I had supplies. If they were still alive out there, they'd be desperate, hungry, and they'd remember exactly where to find food. Mira, I said carefully, you didn't do anything wrong. But we need to prepare for the possibility that your friends might come here looking for help. That's good though, right? We can share? I looked at my inventory spreadsheet. 8 months of supplies for 2 people. Add 3 more? Maybe 4 months. Add more than that? We'd all starve. It's more complicated than that, I said. But we'll figure it out. I didn't tell her that the prophecy had warned about this, about compassion being my downfall, about the living I tried to save being my undoing. I'd saved her, and now her innocent mistake might kill us both. The next week was preparation. I reinforced the bunker entrance with additional steel plating. Inventoried weapons, hunting rifle with 47 rounds, shotgun with 23 shells, 9mm handgun with 31 rounds. Not much. Enough to defend against a few infected. Against desperate humans? Unknown. I set up early warning systems, tripwire bells outside camera range, motion sensors where I could place them. If someone approached the bunker, I'd know. Mira watched me work with growing understanding. She wasn't stupid. She'd figured out what I was preparing for. They're going to try to take everything, aren't they? She asked on day 33. Maybe, maybe not. But we need to be ready. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's not your fault. You were a kid sharing something interesting with friends. You couldn't have known the world would end. But you knew. You prepared. And I messed it up. I looked at her, 11 years old, carrying guilt that would break most adults. We're alive, I said. That's what matters. Everything else we'll deal with as it comes." She nodded, but I could see the weight on her. The understanding that her innocent trust might cost us everything. On day 35, at 2:47 a.m., the motion sensors went off. I was awake instantly, rolling out of bed and moving to the security monitors. 3 shapes on camera 4, approaching from the east. Moving carefully, deliberately. Not infected, humans. "Mira, wake up," I said quietly. "We have visitors." She was up in seconds, standing beside me. Strider jumped down from his shelf, alert. I switched through camera angles, tracking their approach. 3 men. I zoomed in as much as the cameras allowed. Recognition hit like cold water. Talon Reeves. Brecken Lowe. Jet Morrow, local dealer, paranoid, always armed. They knew exactly where they were going. No hesitation. They'd been planning this. By dawn, they were at my perimeter, setting up camp within sight of my entrance. By noon, they'd found the landscaping that concealed the bunker door. "We know you're in there, Kael," Talon shouted. His voice carried through the ventilation system. "Mira told us all about this place, about the supplies. We just want to talk." I activated the intercom system I'd installed for exactly this scenario. "Then talk. Let us in. We can all survive together. Strength in numbers, right?" "Can't do that." "Come on, man. It's the apocalypse. We need to work together." "I have enough supplies for 1 person for 2 years, 2 people for 8 months. Add 3 more, and we all starve in 4 months. Math doesn't work." Silence. Then Brecken's voice, harder-edged. "So you're just going to let us die out here?" "I'll give you supplies. 1 week's worth of food. Take it and leave." "That's not enough." "It's what I can spare." Talon again, trying diplomacy. "Kael, be reasonable. We're not asking for everything, just to share. We can hunt, scavenge, contribute. We're not dead weight." I looked at Mira. She was staring at the monitor showing Talon, face pale. "That's him," she whispered. "Mom's boyfriend." The boyfriend who was now trying to take our supplies. Maybe by force. Definitely not leaving just because I asked nicely. "I'll leave supplies outside," I said through the intercom. "Take them and go." "Not enough," Brecken said. "Open the door. We're not leaving." "Then you're making a mistake." A gunshot hit the bunker entrance. Testing. Seeing if it was vulnerable. The steel plate held. "Okay then," Brecken said. "We'll wait." And they did. Day 36 through day 50 was siege warfare. They camped on my property, visible on cameras, eating through my exterior supply caches. I'd hidden food in waterproof containers around the property as backup. They found most of them. They tried everything. Flooding the air intake. My filters held. Smoke. Ventilation cleared it. Noise. I endured. They fired shots at the entrance regularly, testing it, wasting ammunition, making noise that attracted infected. That was the one saving grace. The infected were everywhere. Talon and his friends had to constantly watch for them, had to fight them off, had to waste energy and ammo staying alive while they waited me out. I strictly rationed everything. Food down to 1,200 calories per day. Water measured precisely. Electricity limited to 2 hours of camera monitoring daily to preserve generator fuel. Mira's mental state deteriorated. Guilt, claustrophobia, fear. She'd curl up in corners, crying silently. She kept apologizing. I kept telling her it wasn't her fault. Neither of us believed it. On day 43, my tooth started hurting. By day 45, it was infected. Full throbbing agony, spreading pain through my jaw. I pulled out my dental manual. Yes, I had a dental manual, because preparation means everything, and studied emergency tooth extraction. Day 47, I did it. Strapped myself into a chair, gave Mira the flashlight, took 4 ibuprofen and 2 shots of whiskey, and went to work with sterilized pliers and a mirror. The pain was extraordinary. White-hot, electric, like someone was running a current through my skull. I felt the tooth crack, felt roots separate from gum, tasted blood and infection draining. Had to stop 3 times to vomit from the pain. But I got it out, rinsed with antiseptic, packed the socket with gauze, lay on the floor shaking while Mira held my hand. "You're crazy," she said. "Survival isn't pretty," I managed. The infection cleared after 4 days of aggressive antibiotics. The pain faded to manageable levels after a week, but I'd used a significant chunk of my medical supplies on one tooth. Outside, Talon and his friends were getting desperate. I could see it in how they moved, hungrier, more aggressive. They were burning through calories fighting infected and hunting what little game remained. They'd run out of food before I did, which meant they'd get desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. On day 53, the generator sputtered. Fuel was running low. I had maybe 12 hours of power left, then we'd be on emergency batteries. Batteries that would last maybe a day before we needed to recharge. Which meant I needed fuel from the exterior cache. Which meant going outside. Which meant exactly what it sounded like. I planned it for night. Infected were less active in darkness, slower to respond. The fuel cache was 200 yards from the bunker entrance, accessible through the emergency tunnel. I left Mira with the handgun and basic instructions. "If I don't come back in 2 hours, seal the tunnel. Don't open it for anyone. Understand?" "I understand." "The bunker can run on batteries for a day. After that, you'll need to recharge. You remember how?" "Yes." "Good. If I'm not back, you're on your own. I'm sorry." She hugged me. "Come back." Planning on it. The tunnel was worse in the dark. Emergency lighting cast weird shadows. Every sound was amplified. I reached the exit, checked through a periscope viewer I'd installed, clear, and emerged. The night was cold. November in Virginia, temperature dropping toward winter. My breath fogged. I could see infected in the distance, silhouettes against moonlight, but none close. I moved low and fast, reaching the fuel cache in 90 seconds. 2 5-gallon canisters, enough to buy us another week of generator operation. I grabbed both, started back. That's when Jet appeared. He'd been awake, paranoid, pacing, saw movement, saw me. "Hey!" he shouted, then started firing. Bullets snapped past. I dropped the canisters, dove behind a tree. Jet kept shooting, wild shots, panicked. Every gunshot echoed through the woods like a dinner bell. Infected started converging. Fast ones, recent turns. Jet saw them coming, swung his gun toward them. That's when I moved. I grabbed one of the fuel canisters, full, heavy, metal, and swung it like a baseball bat. Connected with Jet's head, he went down hard, gun flying. The infected were 30 yards away, 20, 10. I ran, grabbed both canisters, ran for the tunnel. Behind me, Jet was screaming. Then he wasn't. I reached the tunnel, tumbled inside, sealed it. Lay there gasping, listening to the sounds outside. Groaning, tearing, eating. I'd killed a man. Not directly, but I'd put him down, left him for the infected. Same result. When I finally crawled back to the bunker, Mira was waiting with the gun raised. Saw it was me, lowered it. "What happened?" "Got the fuel," I said, voice shaking. "Cost more than I thought." I refueled the generator, threw up in the corner. Sat against the wall until the shaking stopped. Strider came and sat on my lap. Didn't help, but didn't hurt either. The next morning, Talon's voice came through the ventilation. "You killed Jet. This isn't about supplies anymore, Kael. This is personal." Day 56 through day 65 was hell in slow motion. Brecken, with his military training, started systematically probing the bunker's weak points. He knew structure. Knew how to find vulnerabilities. They stopped trying to negotiate, stopped pretending this was about survival cooperation. Now it was revenge and desperation mixed together, which was the most dangerous combination. On day 60, I developed an infection. The cuts from the tunnel, small scrapes I'd barely noticed, had festered. Red streaks running up my arm. Fever, swelling, sepsis. Potentially fatal if untreated. I had antibiotics. I had medical manuals. I had a scared 11-year-old as my surgical assistant. I needed to perform wound debridement, which meant cutting away infected tissue, which meant surgery, on myself, while conscious. "Okay, Mira," I said, laying out instruments on a clean towel. "I need you to be very brave." "I'm always brave," she said, but her voice was shaking. I sterilized a knife in boiling water, poured whiskey over the infected area, screamed through gritted teeth, and started cutting. The pain was beyond description. White-hot agony as I carved away dead tissue, yellow-green infected flesh, trying to reach clean skin underneath. Blood everywhere. Mira holding the flashlight steady even though she was crying. I packed the wound with sterile gauze, taped it, started aggressive antibiotic treatment. Then lay on the floor, shaking, sweating, trying not to vomit. The fever hit that night, 103 degrees, delirious. I saw my great-great-grandmother in fever dreams, her face floating in darkness. "The prophecy isn't complete," she said. "There's more. You haven't seen the ending yet." "What ending?" I asked. "The one where you choose." 3 days of fever. Mira managed the bunker alone, fed Strider, monitored cameras, changed my bandages, kept me alive. On day 64, the fever broke. The infection was clearing. The antibiotics had worked. But I depleted our medical supplies catastrophically. One more major injury, and we'd be out of options. On day 66, we heard the explosion. Brecken had made a homemade explosive. Not sophisticated, fertilizer and fuel, basic construction, but effective. It blew a section of the outer door, damaged the seal. The main door held, but the secondary door, the interior airlock, was now our last line of defense. We fortified it, furniture barricades, everything we could move. I taught Mira to shoot, really shoot, not just hold a gun. We had 47 rifle rounds, 23 shotgun shells, 31 pistol rounds, not much. Enough for maybe one serious fight. "Are they going to get in?" Mira asked. "Eventually, yes." "What do we do?" "We make them regret it." The infected outside were going crazy. The explosion had attracted every corpse within a mile. I could hear them through the damaged door. Hundreds, maybe thousands, moaning, pressing against the entrance. Brecken and Talon were caught between the infected and the bunker. They'd created their own trap. That's when I had the idea. The terrible, necessary idea. Day 69. Dawn. I pulled out the prophecy journal, read it again for the 100th time. Compassion will kill him. The living he tries to save will be his undoing. I'd saved Mira. Her trust had brought Talon and Brecken. Now they were trying to kill us for supplies. But there was another interpretation, another way to read it. Use compassion as a weapon. Use the living as tools. "Mira," I said, "I have a plan. It's dangerous and it might not work." "Tell me." I explained. The emergency tunnel exit. The battery-powered music player from my entertainment supplies. Draw the infected directly to Talon and Brecken's position while they're trying to breach the door. If infected get in the tunnel, we're done, I said. If Talon and Brecken survive and follow the sound back, we're done. But right now, we're done anyway. At least this gives us a chance. "Do it," she said. I armed myself. Knife, flashlight, handgun with 10 rounds. I needed to preserve rifle ammunition for what came after. Gave Mira instructions for sealing the tunnel if I didn't return. 2 hours, I said. If I'm not back, I'm not coming back. Crawled through the tunnel. Emerged into pre-dawn darkness. Frost on the ground, my breath fogging. Infected everywhere. More than I'd realized. The explosion had drawn them from miles around. They were a sea of shambling bodies, clustering around the bunker entrance where Talon and Brecken were working on a second explosive. I placed the music player 70 yards from their position, set it to maximum volume. Classical music. Loud, sustained, perfect for drawing attention. Hit play. Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture erupted into the morning. Every infected in range snapped toward it, started converging. Talon and Brecken saw them coming, started shooting, panicked, wasted ammunition. The horde was too big. I watched from hiding, watched Brecken go down under 10 infected, watched him disappear. Watched Talon break and run into the woods. Then I ran for the tunnel. The infected were everywhere now, drawn by gunfire and music. They saw me, started chasing. I hit the tunnel entrance with 30 seconds lead, crawled, fast as I could, arms burning, lungs screaming. Behind me, sounds, groaning, scraping. They'd found the tunnel. Emerged into the storage room. Mira had sealed her side. I'd given her a signal, 2 knocks, and she hadn't seen me give it. The door was locked. Infected in the tunnel, 20 yards away. 15. I banged on the door. Mira, open it. Sounds from inside, the lock disengaging, door cracking open. I shoved through. Mira slammed it shut behind me. We barricaded it with everything. Shelves, boxes, furniture. On the other side, infected pounding, scraping, trying to claw through. I grabbed the rifle, 47 rounds, fired through the door. The enclosed space was deafening. Mira covered her ears. Strider fled to the highest shelf. I fired until the pounding stopped, until the groaning faded, until the only sound was ringing ears and my own gasping breath. 18 rounds expended, 29 remaining. I collapsed against the wall, covered in blood, not mine. Exhausted, traumatized, but alive. Mira sat down beside me. Didn't say anything, just sat there. Eventually she said, "Brecken's dead?" "Yeah." "And Talon?" "Alive, somewhere out there. He'll come back." "I know." We sat in silence for a long time. Strider eventually came down and sat between us. The 3 of us, in a bunker, surrounded by dead and dying, waiting for the final confrontation. Day 70 through day 72 was strange, quiet. The infected outside dispersed slowly. Talon was invisible. No sign of him on cameras, but I knew he was out there. I was too exhausted to do anything but basic maintenance. Mira handled most tasks. She'd grown up fast, too fast. An 11-year-old managing a survival bunker, while I recovered from what was basically PTSD. On day 71, I reread the prophecy completely, every page. That's when I found it, a final page I'd somehow missed. The prepared man survives the dead, but falls to the living he tried to save. In the darkness underground, he will face the final choice: save himself or save the child. Compassion will demand payment. The price is everything. My blood went cold. It wasn't a general warning. It was specific, detailed. It predicted this exact situation. Me, Mira, the bunker, the siege, the choice. I debated telling her. Decided against it. She had enough to carry, without knowing fate might be predetermined. Instead, I started teaching her everything. Complete bunker operation. How to repair systems, where backup supplies were hidden. Emergency protocols for every scenario I could imagine. "Why are you teaching me this?" she asked. "Because if something happens to me, you need to survive. Nothing's going to happen to you. Maybe, but we prepare for everything. That's how you stay alive." On day 73, I wrote her a letter, explaining everything. The prophecy, my choices, why I'd done what I'd done. Instructions for long-term survival if I didn't make it. I sealed it and told her to open it only if I died. That evening, Talon's voice came through the damaged door. "I know you're wounded. I know you're low on ammo. I'm coming tonight, Kael, and I'm taking everything." I checked my weapons: 19 rifle rounds, 12 shotgun shells, 23 pistol rounds. Mira stood beside me, rifle in hand. "We fight together? We fight together." Strider hissed at the door. He knew something was coming. We waited in the darkness for the end. Midnight, day 73. The door opened. Talon had pried it wider, forced the damaged section and squeezed through. He was covered in cuts, bites, blood. Half dead already, but driven by rage and infection taking hold. He had a crowbar and a pistol. We had distance and defensive position. "Just wanted to survive," he said, voice thick. "Just wanted to live. You took that away." "You could have left," I said. "I offered you supplies." "Not enough. Never enough. 3 people are dead because you wanted more than your share. 3 people are dead because you wouldn't help." He raised the pistol. I raised the rifle. Mira moved behind me, then Talon charged. Everything happened in compressed time. He fired wild. Bullet hit my shoulder, through and through, hot pain, but I stayed up. I fired. Hit him in the leg. He stumbled but kept coming. Mira screamed. Strider launched himself at Talon's legs, clawing. Talon kicked him away. Strider hit the wall hard. I fired again. Missed. Talon swung the crowbar, connected with my wounded shoulder. I went down. Mira fired. The rifle kicked hard. She hit Talon in his other leg. He staggered but didn't fall. The infection was making him stronger, more aggressive, more zombie than human now. He advanced on her. Crowbar raised. I grabbed the shotgun, last resort. Close range only. Rolled over. Aimed. "Mira, down!" She dropped. I fired. Point blank. Center mass. Talon stopped. Looked down at the wound. Looked at me. Fell. The bunker was silent except for ringing ears and my ragged breathing. Blood everywhere. Mine, Talon's, probably Mira's from cuts I hadn't noticed. Mira was frozen, staring at Talon's body. She'd shot someone. 11 years old, and she'd shot someone to save my life. I crawled to her. "Hey, look at me." She looked. Eyes wide, shock setting in. "You did good. You saved us. You did everything right." She started crying, silent, shaking sobs. Outside, infected moaning. They'd heard the shots. They were coming. We had to move. Now. The next hours were chaos. Mira snapped out of shock enough to help. We pushed Talon's body outside through the door gap, attracting infected away briefly. Then we sealed the door as best we could. Welding equipment, furniture, everything we had. My shoulder was bleeding badly. Through and through meant entry and exit wounds. Mira had to pack both sides with gauze while I guided her through it. She did it perfectly, hands steady despite the tears. Strider was injured, but alive. Talon had kicked him hard, possible broken rib. Mira made him a nest with blankets, hand-fed him water. We sat in silence for hours, too exhausted to move, too traumatized to process. Finally Mira said, "Is it over?" "Yeah, it's over." "Did we win?" I looked around. Damaged bunker. Depleted supplies. Injuries that might never heal right. Psychological scars that would last forever. "We survived," I said. "That's not the same as winning." "What's the difference?" "Winning means you got something good out of it. Surviving just means you're not dead yet." She thought about that. "I'd rather survive than not." "Yeah, me too." Day 76 through day 85 was recovery and assessment. My shoulder healed slowly. Limited mobility, probably permanent. Mira took over physical tasks I couldn't manage. She was stronger than I'd realized. We both had PTSD symptoms, hypervigilance, insomnia. I'd wake up at every sound. Mira had nightmares about Talon, about shooting him, about watching people die. We had honest conversations about guilt, about survival, about the cost of staying alive. "I killed someone," she said on day 80. "You saved us." Both things are true. Yeah, both things are true. Does it get easier? No, you just get better at carrying it. That sucks. Yeah, it does. Strider recovered fully. Cats are resilient. He went back to being arrogant and demanding, which was weirdly comforting. Normal in a world gone insane. Our supply situation was critical. Food for 10 days. Water filtration still functional. Medical supplies exhausted. Ammunition minimal. 9 rifle rounds, 12 shotgun shells, 23 pistol rounds. We couldn't stay in the bunker much longer. We'd have to venture out eventually. On day 85, the radio crackled. An automated broadcast, military voice. Safe zone established. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Proceed to coordinates 35.1388 degrees north, 79.0001 degrees west. Military presence. Food. Medical care. All survivors welcome. It could be real. Could be a trap. Could be something worse. Mira and I looked at each other. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think we have 10 days of food and no other options. So we go?" We prepare to go. We don't rush. We plan it right. Okay. We started preparations. Field movement training, infected avoidance protocols, survival on the move, everything she'd need to know. On day 92, Strider died. Quietly, in his sleep. Old age, stress, injury complications. We'd had 9 years together. He'd been a good cat. Arrogant, loyal, exactly what I'd needed. We buried him outside the bunker entrance. Small ceremony. Mira said some words about how he'd been brave and loved us in his own way. I didn't say anything. Just stood there feeling empty. Day 95, present day. I'm recording this final log. We leave tomorrow at dawn, heading for the safe zone. 150 miles through infected territory. Low ammunition, limited supplies, an injured adult and a traumatized kid. Our odds aren't great. But staying here means dying slowly. So we go. I've been thinking about the prophecy, about whether any of this was predetermined or if we made our own choices. Don't have an answer. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Great-great-grandmother Eliza was right about most of it. The outbreak, the timing, the danger of compassion. But she was wrong about one thing, survival being worth it. I don't know if surviving this horror show was worth what it cost. 3 people dead by my choices. Mira's childhood destroyed. My own humanity stripped away piece by piece until I'm just a thing that kills to keep breathing. But we're here, still alive, still trying. If you're hearing this, you survived too. Or you're preparing for your own version of this nightmare. Either way, here's what I learned. Preparation matters. Having supplies, skills, plans. It kept us alive when everything collapsed. But preparation can't account for human variables. Can't predict betrayal or desperation, or the 1,000 ways people complicate survival. The prophecy said compassion kills. It does. Saving Mira brought enemies to my door. But isolation kills too. Without her, I'd have gone insane alone in this bunker. Would have eaten a bullet by day 30. So here's the wisdom I'm leaving. Choose your death carefully. Every choice costs something. Every survival requires sacrifice. Mira wants to say something. If you're listening to this and you're scared, that's normal. Everyone's scared. But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're smart enough to understand danger. Trust carefully. Prepare constantly. And if someone offers help, really look at why they're offering before you accept. The apocalypse doesn't make people better. It just reveals what they already were. We're leaving this recording at the bunker entrance. If you find it, the shelter is yours. Supply caches are marked on the map inside. Emergency protocols are documented. Maybe we make it to the safe zone, maybe we don't. Either way, this bunker outlived its purpose. Time to see what's left of the world. Come on, Mira, let's go. If you survived your own siege, if you're preparing for yours, if you're just trying to understand what happened when civilization fell, subscribe to whatever archive this gets uploaded to. Comment if you're out there. The world's different now. Maybe we'll cross paths. Ready? Ready.